Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us. Today we are going to talk about the Flywater paddle up, cover the technique. We are going to look at slow motion clips of the paddle up, and I'm going to try to walk you through step by step on the process and small details that hopefully are going to help you in your process. So today I'm using the AFS Blackbird 80 by 18 by 115 liter burn. To me, this is a really fast burn. As you know, whenever I want to take off on fly water with a small foil, that is my go-to burn because it does move very well in the water. It is a bigger volume, so I think that's also part of it. Part of the reason why it helps for really paddling up small foils. But the foil I'm going to use today for this demonstration is the new AFS 1300 Enduro. To me, is a pretty easy foil to get up, but for this demonstration, it's perfect. And then I'm using a short mast, 75 centimeters, UHM from AFS, and the paddle, quick blades, Ono Ava 105, adjustable. I love to use the adjustable so I can vary and kind of like play with the lengths and see what I like better. This was set up, pretty short, but this is how I like it. It's about 2 inches under my weight, my height. And all of the gear we feature on the YouTube channel is available at wingfoilprocenter.com. So if you find values in our videos and you want to give back, this is a great way. Go check it out, wingfoilprocenter.com, and let's get going with today's video. I think the first thing I want to talk about is kind of like dissociate the pumping and the paddling. So we're going to start with the pumping, and in my opinion, the pumping for the Flywater paddle up is very, it's the pump foiling technique as you would do when you are pump foiling around, when you are dog standing, where you flag out your wing. It's the same technique. So if you can't, efficiently pump foil for, at least like 10-20 pumps, this is going to be a hard process for you because that's the technique. So your pumping needs to be efficient for it to work for the paddle up. Plus, if you paddle up but you know how to pump, then you got to somewhere where it's still not helpful because once you're up, it's fully pump foiling. So the pump foiling technique is very similar. Key things I would say is starting to get some speed, with your paddle, super easy. We want to work very easy on the paddle for the first few strokes. We are gonna try to lead the rhythm with really the pumping, and then matching your paddle to that. But the pumping is the one leading really everything. So I'm using kind of like the buoyancy of the board to really like sink it and then bounce up. What's very important is the phase where I'm like bouncing up. When I'm going weightless, I'm letting the board, rise out of the water, almost out of the water, and I have a projection kind of like up and forward. So if you see, I'm really like, no weight on the back when I'm extended, when I'm like relieving my weight, when I'm going weightless. There is very little, I'm barely touching the ball with my back foot. You see my heel lifting up, and I'm like over my front foot because I'm like really projecting forward. So at this point, as I'm going weightless, my hip is really going over my front foot. Then, I can't be weightless for a long time, so I need to, get back down. At this point, it's very important to first step before we start pushing to bring the nose down. If I start pushing and the nose of the board is not down, now I'm putting on the brakes. Now I'm pumping uphill. So the goal is that every time we put weight on the board, the nose is pointed down or slightly down so that we can have, some sort of like a glide. That's, critical. And all of that is very, the timing has to be perfect. Every time I'm going weightless, the nose is pointed up. Every time I'm like landing off my hop, about to push again for the next hop, then the nose is down. If we look closely, my hip kind of like shifted back as I'm pushing with my back foot to kind of like load again. But then as soon as I'm like pushing, that hip is boom, again, moving forward over the front foot. So that's the pumping technique. Very important. You should be able to, not necessarily get up on foil, but at least generate forward speed without the paddle and with just your pumping. If you can't, when you pump your board without the paddle, don't use your paddle at all. If you stay in one place, then your pumping is basically not effective. Your pumping is pretty much maybe generating speed and then putting on the brakes, and that's why you are staying in one place. So you want to make sure that with just your pumping, you can generate forward speed, and then we're going to add the paddle. So let's go back to the beginning. And now let's see how the paddle adds onto it. What I think was very important for the paddle is to increase your power, little by little. Don't go 100% on your paddle right away. You're gonna kind of like waste your energy and trying to accelerate quickly, and it's not really necessary. So really, I would say go like 10%, 20%, 30% gradually, until you start to feel like the foil is engaging. Now it's time to give it 100%. So what we are trying to do here is really to time the power that I'm getting from the paddle to the power that I'm getting from my pumping. So how I'm generating speed in my pumping is when I'm pushing and the nose is slightly down. That's the power. That's where we generate power. So the stroke has to match that. As soon as when I'm going weightless, I'm resetting, I'm bringing my paddle forward, and then as soon as I'm digging in and I'm starting to pull on the paddle, then that's when I'm like pushing with my legs as well. So I combine the two like really, forces to generate even more power. So I'm not alternating. I'm really like getting the two like power source together and then resetting in the same time. When I'm reaching forward with the paddle, what's very important is to have your shaft very vertical. That means my top hand is over my bottom hand. So that hand has to reach, because if my hand doesn't go over my bottom hand, now my shaft is not going to be vertical, and that's when we have issues with really like going in a straight line. So we really want to have the shaft of the paddle vertical when we are like, digging in and getting some power. So really reach forward, and if you see where I'm catching really the paddle, I'm digging the paddle first, really like getting it underwater, then pulling it back, and really I'm going in really forward of my front foot, and then I'm done by the time I get to my back foot. There's nothing happening behind my back foot. So it's maybe, let's say, a foot to, maybe a foot in front of my front foot. And then when I get to my back foot, down deal, paddle is going out and we are resetting. So what I like to do, and I'm not sure, I don't have a paddling background, but I feel like that's, has helped me with smaller foils, is with my top hand to really push forward. Not only use your bottom hand to pull, but really push as well with your top hand. And I feel like that is also helping me projecting forward. So that's something that I kind of like think about, not only using your bottom hand to really force on it. I'm using also the top one to really kind of like give it a punch forward, and that helps me overall really bring my weight forward. And you see like my chest is down, I'm really leaning forward, and to me that's an important one, and that's why sometimes with a long paddle, a long shaft, it's a bit more difficult, and we tend to stand straighter, and I think that kind of like gets in the way because you are pretty much pumping uphill because your weight is not forward, your weight is not keeping the foil down, and as soon as the foil start to engage, if you can't keep the nose down, then you are pretty much putting on the brakes, you are pumping, you are paddling uphill, and that's working against you. The other thing that's important to notice is how long I keep paddling after I'm up, and also the process of like pumping up, pumping out of the water. It's very gradual. It's not like a huge step up. It's very small steps all along the way, and that's very important as well, because if I would do a step that's too big, that would require a lot of power. Either like a really like big pump, a really big jump, and then a lot of power from your paddle. So you want to do it very gradually to the point where you start getting out of the water, but you really bring it down and you slap it on the water again. It feels like once you start lifting, you might think like, I want to get out of the water, I want to get up there and don't touch the water anymore. But make sure you come back down, because that small coming back down is helping you getting more speed. So that's very important if you want to be able to rise again after that. So really step by step, and then I'm definitely doing a few strokes even when my board is not touching the water again. So I'm really using my paddle all the way until I'm like up and pretty much high on the mast. So I know I have the speed, I have the height, I'm good. I can now rely just on my pumping and put down the paddle. So I'm up, and now I'm pumping around, and now we are back to just the basic of totally pump foiling basics, which to me, again, it's a bit of the same principle. They need to be a moment where you go weightless. They need to be in that moment where you are weightless, your nose is pointed up, you are rising, you are resetting, you are getting back up high on a mast, and then that cannot last for very long. So when you are coming down, first thing, putting the nose down and then pushing again to get back up. But then every time, as I'm going up, nose is up. As I'm coming down and pushing, nose is down, so I can generate that speed, so I can get that glide. When my nose is up, I can't glide for very long if I don't have something pulling me, because I'm going uphill, so I'm just slowly gonna lose speed. But if I'm slightly pointing down, then I can at least keep speed, and even better, maybe pick up speed. And now I thought it would be pretty cool to show you what it looks like when I'm doing it on a foil that's challenging me to the max. For this one, I'm using the 750 Ultra from AFS. Definitely requires my full technique ability and full physical ability. So you can see what it looks like when really I have to force. Now my technique probably on this one is not, I'm sure it's not as good, just because when you are really pushing physically, it's hard to control the technique as much, and you definitely extend that working on it. So as it relates to anybody, for sure, as you are being really challenged physically, it's hard to keep a proper technique, but that's why we work on it, and that's why we always try to extend that range that we have of ability, physical ability and skill level. So here is my attempt, and definitely not 100% success on this foil, and when I get it, I'm not gonna get 10 in a session. It's the type of foil that I get maybe a few, and then I'm totally toast. But it's taking a lot more strokes, of course, and everything has to be a lot more gentle. I would say with a big foil, you can definitely rely more on the pumping and less on the paddle. With a small foil, the problem with the pumping is pumping is not very effective on a small foil until you reach speed, because your pumping really can actually make the foil stall on a small foil. So I would say on a small foil, you definitely rely more on your paddle than on your pumping, at least until you get to a decent speed level, and then your pumping can kind of like help you a bit more. But this is what it looks like to really give it 100%, and getting it after 40 strokes, about 40 strokes. That's usually what it takes me to get up on this foil, and by the time I'm up, then I don't have much left in the tank. So of course, this is on flat water, in the bumps, totally different game, so much easier in with a small bump. So even in minimal conditions, it's 10 times easier, and so, but it's really good practice on flat water. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. Hopefully you picked up a few things, and I learned all of this on my own. So my technique, I'm not I'm not saying my technique is perfect, and so if you come from a paddling background, definitely feel free to chip in and give any tips that you have, and if I either say anything wrong or if I miss something, make sure to drop it in a comment. We are here to help each other. This is a community, and we are trying to all work on it together, learn together in that process. So get out there, spend the time. It is very difficult. It is a frustrating process, but you got to put the time in, and you got to be nice to yourself, not too critical of yourself, because it is a hard thing. And the flat water paddle up is not necessarily like required to get into downwinding. Like you can definitely get up on foil when you are downwinding in some bumps, and still you can't get up on flat water. So it's not a requirement, but I would still say it is a very good drill, and something you can do when you just don't have the conditions to downwind. So of course this is not the most fun part, but it is gonna help you so much when you're out there downwinding. So get out there, have fun, stay positive. It's not easy, but you got it. And on this note, we'll see you guys next time.